Hello and welcome back as we continue our little trip down the Final Fantasy memory lane. Today we'll be looking at the year 1990 and at a certain game series that started on the Game Boy. This series will be the Final Fantasy Legend. I will actually be looking at all three games in this series, Legend 1, 2, and 3. So let's go ahead and begin. Final Fantasy Legend, which was originally titled Final Fantasy Saga, bullshit! Yes, these games are the predecessors to the Saga series, in case you were wondering. In 1989, when it released in Japan and was conceived by Nobuyuki Hoshino and developed by Akitoshi Kawazu, the game's storyline is actually quite interesting to the point that today it will cause controversy amongst the Christian community. Let me give you the Cliff Notes version of this. The main character you create, along with the allies that you meet on your way and you recruit into your party, are attempting to scale a tower that was built by the creator, who was called God in the Japanese version. Along the way, you pass through 4 different worlds, and you defeat archfiends in each of these worlds, and when they finally reach the top floor and defeat the archfiend there, they just happen to fall into a trap and get dropped back down to the first floor. The adventurers then scale the tower again, this time on the outside, fighting all of the archfiends they believe previously dead until they reach the pinnacle of the tower and meet the creator himself. Then they learn that the tower was built as a game by the creator to see humans and other creatures smite evil for his own enjoyment and pleasure. The heroes become a little bit pissed and, well, they kill him. So yes, in this game you do effectively kill God. Now that I have your attention, allow me to cover a few aspects of the game itself. When you first start the game, you can create a character by selecting one of the following races: Human, Mutant, which was called Esper in the Japanese version, wink wink Final Fantasy VI, and Monsters. From there you can recruit new characters in each world consisting of these same races. Now comes the confusing part of this game, and the part of the game that many new fans do not enjoy about it. Character development in Final Fantasy is a pretty cut and dry thing, right? You fight and you gain experience and you gain levels. Well, not when you look at this series. It sure as hell is not. This shit is confusing. Let's look at human growth. This part is pretty simple. You buy an item that increases stats and then you use it and you're done. Now mutants, their stats will randomly increase after battles, as will their abilities, though they can actually lose abilities after a battle as well. So getting what you want out of a mutant really requires a godlike patience and luck, if you will. Now as for the monsters, they are just as freaking bad. Monsters hold a class and subclass, aka vampire and a subclass of zombie, just to give an example. Now they don't level or just increase stats. Their power is increased by eating meat that can be dropped by an enemy after battle. The type of meat combined with the class and subclass of the monster will either increase their stats and abilities or change their monster race completely. Now, as bad as this system sounds, it actually adds to the enjoyment of the game in my opinion. I love seeing the different outcomes with my characters each time I play it. Other than my human characters, I have never had 2 characters that are exactly the same in any given playthrough. This adds something to the game every time you play it and keeps things fresh and exciting. When you get used to it, that is. The next area I need to cover is how equipment works in Final Fantasy Legend. You know how items go through wear and tear and will eventually break apart and be unusable? They included that in this game. You can buy weapons such as swords, plasma rifles, bows, spears, chainsaws, and axes. You know, all the typical Final Fantasy items. And each of these will have a certain number of times they can be used until they eventually become unavailable to you. Yet another item of micromanagement in this game for you to have fun with. You can also get items such as potions and armor to be used. Though to defend in battle, you will have to buy a shield, which also has a limited number of uses. The same thing goes for spells as well. When you buy a new spell, it will have a certain number of uses before you have to buy that spell all over again. Now, with the human being able to carry 8 pieces of equipment, mutants being able to carry only 4, and monsters none, this system makes for some very stressful situations. Now quickly, before I move on, I want to cover the combat system. The screen looks very similar to that of Dragon Warrior, though you only have 2 options, fight or flee. When you choose fight, your options depend on the items you have given to each character or their skills if they are a monster. After battle, as stated before, meat could be dropped, which then can be ate by one of your monster characters, or one of your mutant characters could evolve and become more powerful. The possibilities are downright freaking endless. Though if a character dies, they only have 3 lives, which is actually represented by hearts. Each time you revive a character, they lose one of these hearts, and when they are out, it's time to go recruiting it again. Now I will briefly cover Legends 2 and 3. I'll cover some of the changes they made and give a brief synopsis on the storylines. In Legend 2, released in 1992, you are actually on a quest to find 77 Magi, which are shards to a shattered statue of a goddess, Isis, who is the goddess that repairs the multiple worlds. Now, there are a few notable changes from the first game. You spend more time exploring castles, dungeons, and caves for one. They also took away the one death penalty. If you die in battle, the god Odin will place you back in that same battle to give you yet another chance to try and win. Though this is taken away from you in a rather ironic manner, which I really don't want to spoil because it is just too damn good to give away. Now, the equipment and growth system stayed pretty much the same, so let's go ahead and move on to Legend 3. But before I do, I have to state that Legend 2 did receive an update on the Nintendo DS, but only in Japan. So I haven't actually played that one, I just know of it. Legend 3 was developed by Square and published in America by Sunsoft. Square? Soft? Epic foreshadowing! It was released in America in 1993. The plot this time actually follows three characters who are sent back in time to stop a water entity from flooding the world. If they cannot do this, obviously things won't be very good for the world in the end. The main changes include a streamlined battle system that is much easier to use, and the fact that your characters will either start as a human or a mutant. Though you can change their class by either eating meat that is dropped or installing cyborg and robot parts, which will completely change how your character is played because it will turn them into either an android or it will turn them into a monster. Though if you don't like being a cyborg, then eat enough meat and you will become your default class yet again, and vice versa. So that is the Final Fantasy Legends series. Wait, oh yeah, I forgot to cover that thing I mentioned in the last video about Pokemon, didn't I? Well, you see, when Final Fantasy Legend was released, the only real type of game to be on the Game Boy were action games. Now, when Legend was released, a man by the name of Satoshi Tajiri, who is most well known for founding Game Freak itself, played it and was impressed, and stated that it gave him the idea to make a large-scale game for the Game Boy because Legend proved that the system could handle something much more complex than just action games. Out of this inspiration, the first Pokemon were born. So thank you, Final Fantasy, for helping bring one of my other favorite series to life. In closing, I would have to say that if you ever get the chance to play through these, then do so. They are fun, though rather difficult and stressful, but the elation of finally beating them is amazing, to say the least. That, and you have the music of Nobuo Uematsu to keep you company yet again. Like I said, that guy composes the music for most of Square's crap. Get used to me mentioning him in this retrospective. Now join me next time where we will look at the Game Boy one last time, and look at the game that started the Secret of Mana series on the SNES, also better known as the Seiken Densetsu series.